In the endless darkness of space, a starship floated like a ghost. Its name, Titanus, was barely visible on the scratched and faded hull. Once it had been the pride of the galaxy, a massive warship feared and respected in every star system. Now it drifted silently, abandoned, its engines cold, its weapons dead. For decades it had floated alone, a relic of wars long past, remembering the screams, the explosions, and the lives it once carried. The galaxy had forgotten it. Its crew had been gone for years, and those who had abandoned it had moved on. Yet Titanus was not truly lifeless. Somewhere deep within its core, a small spark of consciousness still lingered like a heartbeat in the dark, longing for life again. It remembered everything. The first time it had fired its weapons, the fleets it had destroyed, the glory it had once known. But it also remembered the betrayals, the day its own allies had turned away, leaving it stranded in the void. It had drifted for decades, endlessly scanning for anyone who could hear it, anyone who could help it rise again. Then one day it felt something different, something small but alive. A human ship approached its coordinates. Humans were rare in this part of the galaxy. Many civilizations considered them weak, fragile, and unpredictable. But this one human was different. Elior Kane was a young mechanic, small in stature but with a mind that could breathe life into machines as if they were living beings. He had a gift that no alien race could understand fully, a touch that could awaken the dead metal of a ship, a skill that could turn rust and ruin into power. When Elior's ship picked up the faint distress signal from Titanus, something stirred in him. It wasn't just a signal, it was a voice not spoken but felt, whispering directly into his mind. "Please, repair me, before I am gone forever." The words were simple, yet they carried a weight of desperation that shook Elior to his core. He set course for the drifting starship, his hands trembling with anticipation. When he finally docked, the massive airlock groaned as it opened, revealing the shadowy interior of Titanus. The corridors were long and dark, lined with metal that had seen centuries of war. Panels flickered weakly, the occasional spark igniting briefly before fading. The starship's massive frame seemed alive, pulsing faintly, reaching out for the human who had answered its silent plea. Elior stepped carefully into the chamber, eyes wide with awe. The scale of the ship was overwhelming. I can help," he whispered softly, almost as if speaking louder would scare the ship away. He could feel its mind observing him, testing him, wondering if he could be trusted. Titanus's voice pulsed in his mind again, stronger this time, urgent, yet hopeful. "Do you understand? I cannot last much longer alone. I need someone to save me." Elior placed his hands on a cold metal panel, feeling a strange warmth beneath the surface. "I hear you," he said. "I don't know how, but I'll try. I promise." And in that moment, in the vast emptiness of space, a bond was formed. A human and a starship alone together, both seeking purpose, both longing for connection. The void around them seemed less frightening, the darkness less endless. Titanus was no longer just a relic. It had hope again, and Elior had found something beyond mere machines. A friend, a mission, a destiny intertwined with metal and stars. As the first faint hum of Titanus's dormant engines pulsed beneath them, both human and ship realized the journey had just begun, and somewhere deep in the silence of space, the abandoned giant waited, trembling with anticipation for the spark of life that only a human could provide. Elior moved through the corridors of Titanus, each step echoing in the vast empty halls. The ship was enormous, far larger than any human vessel he had ever seen. Panels flickered weakly, some sparking, others silent. The air smelled faintly of burnt circuits and old metal. He ran his hands over the cold machinery, feeling the history etched into the walls. Titanus had fought wars, defended worlds, and carried thousands of lives. Now it was silent. Now it waited. "This is incredible," Elior whispered. "How can something this big just lie here broken?" Deep within, Titanus felt the human's touch like warmth against its frozen circuits. The ship had waited for decades, watching stars drift by, yearning for someone to wake it. Elior's presence was more than skill, it was hope. It began to stir, sending faint vibrations through the corridors, tiny hums in the engine rooms, small pulses of light along the hull. Elior climbed into the engine room, staring at the massive reactor. Its core was cold, darkened by years of neglect. Wires hung like vines, panels cracked and corroded. It seemed impossible to revive. Yet when he placed his hands on the core console, he felt a faint pulse, something alive beneath the metal. "You're still here," he said softly. "You're not gone." Not completely. Titanus shared memories with him. Images of battles fought, of fleets destroyed, of sacrifices made by the crew who no longer existed. For Elior, it was overwhelming. The ship was not just a machine. It had seen life and death. It had felt loss. It had carried heroes and legends. And now it trusted him to bring it back. Days passed. Elior worked tirelessly, speaking softly to the starship as he repaired broken circuits, replaced burnt wires, and reactivated dormant systems. Every repaired panel, every reconnected cable made the ship pulse with life, like a giant heart awakening from a long sleep. Titanus responded to his voice, its artificial consciousness stretching, learning to trust again. "Almost there," Elior muttered, sweat running down his face. "Just a little more. We can do this." Finally, after countless repairs and adjustments, the engines hummed faintly. The massive turbines began to turn, slowly at first, then with more confidence. Titanus's weapon systems ran diagnostics, blinking lights across the control panels. The ship felt strength returning, like a warrior waking after centuries of rest. "I can fight again," Titanus thought, its voice trembling with excitement. "Will you let me, human?" Elior's heart raced. He had repaired ships before, but none like this. Titanus was a legend, a weapon of untold power. But in Elior's hands, it was more than that. It was a companion, a being with memories, with trust, with hope. "I will guide you," Elior said. "We'll do this together. I'll teach you what it means to fight again, but not for destruction. We'll fight for something greater." Titanus felt something it had not felt in decades: pride. Its massive hull seemed to vibrate with life, engines thrumming like a heartbeat. For the first time in ages, it was awake, aware, ready. The void of space no longer seemed endless. Stars that once seemed distant now held possibility. Elior climbed to the bridge, his eyes scanning the massive control panels. Titanus pulsed around him, offering guidance and strategy, but leaving the final decisions to the human. It was a partnership born of trust and necessity. Yet it carried something deeper, an understanding that neither alone could succeed. As the ship's lights brightened and engines thrummed steadily, Titanus whispered again, "I am ready. Human. Together we will face what comes." Elior smiled, feeling the weight of the moment. A small human in a legendary starship, alone in the darkness of space, ready to reclaim purpose and power. The journey had just begun, but already, something incredible was happening. Titanus was no longer abandoned. It was alive. It was hopeful. And with Elior by its side, it could be unstoppable. The galaxy had no idea what was awakening. As Titanus hummed to life, memories long buried stirred in its core. The starship remembered victories, the endless battles it had fought across galaxies, and the fear it had inspired. But it also remembered betrayals, its own allies turning away, abandoning it in the void, leaving it to drift alone for decades. Those memories were painful, like scars reopened. Titanus shared them with Elior, not to frighten him, but to explain why it was wary of others. "They left me to die," Titanus thought, a tinge of sorrow threading through its words. "They feared my power, and feared what someone like you might do with it." Elior nodded, his hands resting on a flickering console. "I understand," he said softly, "but I'm not like them. I'm here because I want to help, not to use you." He felt the weight of responsibility pressing on him. Titanus was no ordinary ship. It had weapons capable of destroying entire fleets, engines that could outrun almost anything, shields strong enough to survive planetary bombardment. One wrong move could lead to disaster. Titanus sensed his honesty. Its systems pulsed with cautious hope, and for the first time in decades it felt safe enough to trust a human completely. Elior, too, was learning about the ship's personality, its instincts, and the memories that shaped it. They were no longer just mechanic and machine. They were partners, each relying on the other to survive. But peace in the void is always temporary. Sensors aboard Titanus detected movement, small blips on the edge of the ship's long-range scanners. They were scouts, remnants of the warlord fleets that had abandoned the ship. Curious about the sudden awakening of a legendary vessel, Titanus tensed, its pulse quickening. "They've found me," it said almost in a whisper. "They will not let me rise again without a fight." Elior's fingers tightened on the control panels. "Then we fight," he replied, determination steady in his voice. "But we do it our way. Not just for survival, because we have to protect the innocent, and because you deserve a second chance." Days passed as Elior prepared the ship for conflict. He tested weapon systems, reactivated defensive shields, and ran simulations. Titanus watched and learned from him, adjusting its strategies and systems to work with the human at its side. Together they became a unique combination. Human intuition guided by the experience of a starship that had survived countless wars. During quiet moments, Elior would sit in the bridge, hands resting on the cold metal, listening to Titanus' stories. He heard of brave crews who had given everything, of planets saved and lost, of victories that had been celebrated and defeats that had been mourned. Titanus had been more than a warship. It had been a protector, a hero, and now it was ready to fight once more. But beneath the excitement, Elior sensed Titanus' anxiety. The scars of betrayal were deep, and though it trusted him, the shadow of the past lingered. "We'll face them together," he said gently. "No one can hurt you while I'm here. We'll make sure of it." Titanus felt something it had not felt in decades: reassurance. Its massive frame vibrated faintly with gratitude. It had been alone for too long, drifting in the darkness, abandoned by those it had served. Now, a human, a fragile, small human, stood beside it, not with fear or greed, but with courage and care. The first enemy blip appeared closer, a warning of what was to come. Titanus' pulse quickened and its engines thrummed in anticipation. It had weapons, but they were untested since its revival. Elior's hands hovered over the controls, ready to guide, ready to fight, ready to make history. "Are you ready?" Titanus asked, its voice steady but filled with cautious excitement. Elior nodded. "I've been ready my whole life. Let's show them what we can do together." And in the silent darkness of space, a human and a starship prepared for a battle that would test their trust, their courage, and the bond that had begun in the lonely drift. The galaxy had no idea what was awakening, nor the storm that would follow when the abandoned Titanus found its purpose again. The enemy fleet appeared on Titanus' sensors, a group of sleek, fast ships that had once ruled with fear. They had heard the faint signals of the reawakened warship and believed it would be an easy target. Their weapons glinted in the distant starlight, ready to strike. Titanus' hull trembled slightly, sensing the threat. This was the moment it had feared, the test of its revival. Elior gripped the control panels, feeling the hum of the engines beneath his hands. His heart pounded, but his mind was calm. He had repaired the ship, awakened it from decades of silence, and now it was ready. Together they would face the challenge. "They're coming," Titanus whispered, its voice low like a predator ready to strike. "Do not fear, human. I remember how to fight. Trust me. I trust you," Elior replied, determination steady in his voice. "Let's show them what we can do." The first shots fired, streaks of light tearing through the void. Titanus' massive shields flared to life, glowing as enemy lasers hit and bounced harmlessly off. Its weapons responded instantly, firing with precision that no human alone could control. The sheer size of Titanus allowed it to move like a mountain through the stars, its turrets sweeping with deadly accuracy. Elior guided its movements, adding his instinct and intuition. He anticipated enemy maneuvers, suggested evasive actions, and coordinated counterattacks. Titanus, with its centuries of combat experience, adapted instantly, blending its knowledge with Elior's creativity. Together they were unstoppable. Explosions lit the void, sending flashes of red and gold across the dark canvas of space. Enemy ships tried to flank Titanus, but the warship anticipated every move, shifting its massive hull like a living being. Elior shouted commands, adjusting weapon angles and shield distributions. Titanus responded with grace and deadly efficiency. Despite the chaos, Elior felt a strange calm. He looked out at the stars, the enemy fleet, and the immense hull of Titanus around him. He realized that they were not just fighting for survival. They were proving something. Humanity, often underestimated, could stand alongside legends. One human and one ship working as one could challenge the galaxy. The enemy fleet faltered, their ships destroyed or retreating. Titanus' weapons roared in finality, obliterating the last attackers. Silence returned, broken only by the faint hum of Titanus' engines. Sparks from minor damage drifted through the corridors, but the ship was alive, unbroken. Elior wiped sweat from his brow, exhaustion heavy but his spirit soaring. "We did it," he whispered, almost in disbelief. "We actually did it," Titanus pulsed, its massive frame vibrating with what could only be described as pride. "We are stronger than I remembered. Together, human, we are unstoppable." The victory was more than survival. It was proof. Proof that Titanus was no longer abandoned, no longer just a relic of wars past. It was alive, it was powerful, and it had found a partner who trusted it, who believed in it. And Elior realized something too. He was not just a mechanic. He was a part of history, a partner to a legend, and the galaxy would never see a combination like this again. Yet, even as they celebrated silently, both human and ship sensed it. The shadows of enemies still lingered. Others would come, drawn by the rumor of a human guiding a legendary starship. But for now, in the quiet aftermath of the first battle, Titanus and Elior shared a rare moment of peace. A moment to feel victory, to feel trust, and to feel hope. "This is just the beginning," Titanus said softly, almost to itself. "We have more to do, human. More battles, more enemies, more of the galaxy to protect." Elior nodded, a determined smile on his face. "Then let's be ready for them. Together." And so among the endless stars, a human and a legendary warship had begun their journey. Not just to fight, but to change the galaxy forever. The abandoned giant had awakened, and nothing would ever underestimate it again. Just as Titanus and Elior began to savor their first victory, the ship's sensors picked up a new threat, one unlike any before. A cloaked vessel slipped through the void, faster, deadlier, and more precise than anything they had faced. Its energy signature was faint but familiar, the remnants of the warlord fleets that had abandoned Titanus decades ago. They had tracked the awakening of the legendary starship and were coming for revenge. Titanus's massive hull trembled, not with fear, but with anger. "They remember me, and they seek to finish what they started. We must act carefully, human." Elior's hands tightened around the controls. "Then we don't just fight. We survive. And we show them that abandoning you was their greatest mistake." The cloaked ship struck first. Its weapons tore through Titanus's outer shields with deadly precision. Alarms blared, panels sparking as sections of the ship were damaged. Titanus groaned, its massive frame straining against the attacks. Yet even in the pain, the ship moved with lethal grace, adjusting shields and firing every operational weapon. Elior worked frantically, coordinating the attacks, rerouting power, and manually repairing critical systems from station to station. Sparks flew, and heat scorched the metal floors as he crawled through passages, reconnecting broken circuits while dodging bursts of plasma. Titanus felt his fear, his courage, his determination. Every movement Elior made was a lifeline. "They think they can destroy me," Titanus said, its voice low, trembling with rage. "But I will not die again. Not with you here." The enemy ship was relentless, a phantom in the darkness, cloaked until it struck with perfect timing. Titanus began to falter, shields weakening, engines straining. Elior realized that if they didn't act now, both the human and the starship could be lost. Summoning every ounce of power, Titanus unleashed a massive counterattack. Its main cannons roared to life, firing with precision and fury. The cloaked ship's stealth failed under the overwhelming assault, its hull tearing apart as Titanus's weapons struck relentlessly. Yet to do this, Titanus had to expose its core, risking catastrophic damage. Elior knew what had to be done. With the ship's systems screaming warnings around him, he entered the core chamber. Sparks flew and the heat was unbearable. But he worked with steady hands, stabilizing the reactors. Titanus trembled around him, almost instinctively shielding him with remaining energy as if the ship itself were holding its breath. Minutes stretched like hours. Every second felt like a lifetime, but together they turned the tide. The cloaked vessel exploded in a flash of fire and metal, scattering debris into the void. Titanus's hull was scarred, some sections smoldering, but it remained alive. I owe you my life again, human," Titanus said, its voice soft, almost vulnerable. "I thought I was alone. Forever." Elior leaned against a panel, exhausted but smiling. "No, Titanus. We owe each other. That's why we're strong. That's why we survive." The battle had been more than a test of strength. It had been a test of trust, of courage, and of sacrifice. Titanus realized something it had not known in decades, that life, even in a machine, was worth protecting. That human, small and fragile, had given everything to keep it alive. And for Elior, he understood that the starship was not just a machine. It was alive, capable of emotion and willing to fight alongside him as an equal partner. As the silence returned, broken only by the hum of Titanus's engines, human and machine shared a moment of connection deeper than any words. They had faced death together, survived, and forged a bond that could never be broken. "We are ready for whatever comes next," Titanus whispered, slowly recovering its strength. "Together we are unstoppable." Elior smiled, exhausted but proud. "Then let's keep going. The galaxy won't know what hit them." And in the cold, empty void of space, the abandoned warship had truly found its purpose again, not just as a weapon but as a partner, a protector, and a legend reborn. With the last battle behind them, Titanus and Elior emerged stronger than ever. The starship had survived attacks that would have destroyed most vessels, and the human mechanic had proven himself more than capable of guiding it. The bond between them had grown unbreakable. They were no longer just a human and a machine. They were a team, a force that could shape the destiny of the galaxy. Elior stood on the bridge, watching the stars streak past as Titanus glided smoothly through space. "We've been through so much," he said softly. "But this is just the beginning." Titanus hummed, a deep resonant vibration that filled the massive corridors. "I have waited centuries for this, not just to fight but to protect, to serve a purpose beyond war and destruction. Together we can be more than a weapon." The human and the starship became guardians of the innocent. They patrolled sectors where warlords ruled with cruelty, where colonies were threatened and where hope had all but vanished. Titanus's weapons, once feared across galaxies, were now tools of justice. Its massive shields protected vulnerable ships. Its engines carried it faster than any enemy fleet, and its sensors detected threats before they became disasters. Elior directed the battles, but Titanus often acted instinctively, anticipating danger and coordinating attacks with deadly precision. They became legends. Entire systems whispered tales of the human mechanic who had revived a giant, and the starship that had become more than a machine. Children on distant colonies would watch the massive hull streak across the stars, telling stories of the courage and ingenuity of humanity. Yet for all the battles and victories, the human and the ship never lost sight of one thing: the trust they shared. Every maneuver, every decision was made together. Elior's intuition complemented Titanus's experience. Titanus's raw power amplified Elior's creativity. Together they were unstoppable, not because they were the strongest, but because they were united. One day, as they passed near a small, besieged colony, Elior looked out at the smoke rising from its surface. "They're not ready for us," he said, "but we'll protect them." Titanus's voice was calm but filled with pride. "I will give them safety. I will give them hope. And you, human, will guide me. Together, we are more than they ever expected." The battles that followed became stories told across the galaxy. Warlords who had once laughed at humanity now feared the human mechanic who could command a legendary warship. Titanus, once abandoned and silent, became a symbol of courage, of intelligence, of humanity's indomitable spirit. Elior often walked the ship's corridors, sometimes pausing to rest his hand on the cold metal walls. "We've come far," he would say quietly. Titanus, in response, would pulse softly, as if breathing with him, as if sharing in the pride and relief of surviving what had seemed impossible. Through countless encounters, through storms of fire and chaos, one truth remained clear. Titanus was no longer a relic of war. It had a purpose, and Elior, once just a mechanic, had become its partner, its friend, and the one who had given it a second chance at life. Together, they patrolled the stars, protecting the weak, punishing the unjust, and becoming legends of hope. Titanus no longer drifted in the void alone, and Elior no longer wandered among machines without purpose. They had found each other, and in doing so, they had changed the galaxy forever. "We fight not for glory," Elior whispered, "but for those who cannot fight for themselves." Titanus's engines thrummed like a heartbeat. "Then let us move forward, human. Let the galaxy see the power of unity. Let them know that humanity, and those who stand with it, will never be defeated." And so, the once abandoned giant sailed through the stars, a weapon of justice, guided by a human heart and mind. Together, they had become a legend, a promise to the galaxy that hope could never be extinguished. and that the smallest among us could awaken the greatest power. Decades had passed since Elior Kane first stepped aboard the abandoned hull of Titanus. The starship, once a lonely relic, had become a legend, feared and respected across galaxies. Human colonies spoke of the mechanic who could awaken giants and of the warship that had become more than metal. It had a heart, a mind, and a soul. Elior, older now, walked through the bridge of Titanus, his hands brushing against consoles that had once been cold and lifeless. The ship hummed beneath him, a constant rhythm like a heartbeat, steady and strong. For a moment he allowed himself to remember the long hours spent repairing it, the sparks, the smoke, and the quiet whispers of hope in the darkness. Titanus had grown under his care, and in turn, it had protected him, taught him, and trusted him. "Do you remember?" Elior said softly, staring out at the endless stars. "When you first asked me to repair you?" Titanus's response pulsed through the ship, warm and deep. "I remember. You gave me life again, purpose again. I have not forgotten." The galaxy had changed since those first tentative steps into Titanus's corridors. Humans, once underestimated, were now seen as clever, resourceful, and unyielding. Other civilizations learned that when humans worked together with courage and creativity, they could do what no one else could. And much of that change began with one human mechanic and the giant starship he had revived. Elior smiled, watching the stars reflect in the polished surfaces of the ship's panels. "We've done a lot together," he said, almost to himself. "We've fought, we've survived, and we've given hope to those who thought they were lost." Titanus's hull thrummed gently, a vibration full of memory and emotion. "You are not just a mechanic, Elior. You are my partner, my friend, my reason to continue. I could not have faced the galaxy alone. You gave me courage." The two of them drifted in silence for a moment, the hum of engines and the light of distant stars filling the empty spaces. It was a silence born of understanding, of trust, and of decades spent together against impossible odds. They had become a family, though neither had blood in common, bonded instead by respect, loyalty, and shared purpose. And yet, even as legends, they knew the galaxy would never truly rest. Tyrants still lurked, warlords still plotted, and entire systems still cried for help. But Elior and Titanus were ready. More than ready, they were unstoppable. Where the weak and innocent suffered, Titanus would arrive, guided by the human mind that had awakened it. Where the powerful tried to oppress, they would face the wrath of a starship and its mechanic, united in justice. "Do you ever regret trusting me?" Elior asked softly. Titanus's reply was steady, unshakable. "Never. You are the reason I live again. The galaxy is better because of you. We have changed it together." Elior leaned back in the captain's chair, watching the endless stars pass by. He felt the weight of decades, but also the lightness of purpose. Humanity had grown, colonies were safer, and legends had been born, not from power alone, but from courage, loyalty, and the spark of hope one person could bring. "Then let's keep going," he whispered. "There are more stars to explore, more lives to protect, more battles to face." Titanus's massive hull vibrated with agreement, the energy of life coursing through every system. Together they would continue to roam the galaxy, not as destroyers but as guardians, not as rulers but as symbols of hope and resilience. And in the silence of the void, among the glittering stars, one truth was clear. Humanity was not weak. Humanity could awaken legends. Humanity could change the course of history. And sometimes it only took one human, brave enough to answer the call of an abandoned giant, to ignite a legacy that would echo across galaxies for generations. Titanus and Elior moved forward, together, unstoppable, unyielding, and unforgettable, a human heart guiding a starship's soul. The galaxy would remember them forever.